Hello, everybody. It's Friday. That means it's time for another topic of the week. So, first things first, last week's topic on display boards. Lots of good discussion there. And I'm appreciative of how many people. It's good to know I'm not alone in the world. Special shout out to Jeff Egan, who also chimed in with a very nice and thorough response of the history of them and why he dislikes them. But to be fair, there were also many proponents who like them and are supporters of them and find great value in them. So clearly this is one of those things split down the middle. I would love to see them gotten rid of for anything except armies on parade or for people who tend to just want to use them. But here we are. We live in this world, and I suspect there's no going back. So I better get on the train or get off. Or at least get out of the way. But I wanted to turn to this week's topic. So there was a rather interesting ongoing Twitter conversation that I noticed last night and earlier today that happened around something that kind of came out of our show last week and or this week and kind of was tangential to it. But long story short, it was about this. There was a particular unit being discussed. And, somebody said basically that unit is rubbish or isn't good. And it is, that's no good. Don't take that thing. That's bad. That's bad unit. And then a couple other people said, well, I quite like the thing, or I don't think it's that bad, or whatever. And then this discussion emerged, right? But there's sort of a meta discussion that was also happening alongside the discussion of the actual unit of don't say something is rubbish. Out of context, what does that even mean? And the reason I thought this would be an interesting topic is because it came up on our show this last week as well, when Tom, my co-host at Warhammer Weekly, basically mentioned, he said, well, my Nurgle list just doesn't work anymore. Well, of course he doesn't really mean that. It works just fine. The same, he could run more or less the same list. Maybe not exactly. There were a few changes in GHB 17, but he could get within striking distance of the same list. And would it perform as well? Hard to say. Probably not in straight form without changes. But does that mean it's no good anymore? And that got me thinking about the nature of how we describe these things. And oftentimes we like with everything, it's easy to give short sort of bumper sticker descriptions. This unit's good, this unit's not good, this is OP, this is trash, whatever. And without really contemplating sort of what we're saying on a deeper level. But what's interesting to me is we can all use that, but we apply it to very different things. And that led me to this week's topic, which is, what is a unit being good or bad or overpowered or trash, or however you want to say that? How does that spread look to you? Because Tom, my co-host, we were discussing this, and so I'm not speaking out of school here, he has a much different bar than I do. When I say something I think is good or fine or whatever, that's still well below his line. We both mean the same words. We're both using the terms in what we think are the same way. The difference is his bar for what he considers to be effective is much higher. Something has to be sort of an outlier to a much more extreme variety for him to find it really good or really maybe great even. And whereas for me, something just has to be kind of not total worthless, which is, again, those loaded terms. And that's the problem. Every time we use one of those, it's so loaded with all this hidden subtext of for me, in this case, assuming most games, assuming match play, I feel as though I need the lawyer to come in and read the not valid in all states, only where only participating things, no purchase necessary. I feel like I need that text read every time I say this, so I'm not misinterpreted. And I do think there are units in the game that, even by my standards, I'm just that is trash and has basically no purpose whatsoever. The Blood Throne being one of them for me that I think just doesn't even meet the barest minimum of I look at the points and I look at what it does and I do not understand in any way, or its combination with other units, and I have no idea what the purpose of this thing is. But I think that there aren't... I can certainly recognize an efficiency curve and say these things are quite good, but where does the bar fall for you of what you'll play with, and do you take its efficiency into consideration, or do you simply play what you want? Regardless of how good it is, I just put units on the table. I don't even care. I take what I like, period. Which, if you are, kudos, and I hope the rest of your group is like that too. That can certainly obviously lead to some fun games of Warhammer. I think in my particular group, the bar tends to be lower. We tend to play what we like or what we think is interesting or what we think is fun. We want it to be good. But as long as it's not sort of down in the trash or at least like extremely subpar, then it's good enough. And so that's what I wanted to discuss this week. How do you define what you put on the table? What's good enough for you? Are you choosing solely based on maybe the models you own and what you like? Or is there, or I suspect that's true for few. My suspicion is that most of us do some kind of power evaluation. But the difference is where we cut our line. What does it have to hit for you to be considered, for you to consider worth it, I guess. And I understand there's not a quantifiable thing you can put your finger on, like, oh, it has to be 67% efficient. What? That's not a thing. I get that. But just when you think about it, do you tend to say, okay, well, it has to perform at this top level. I would have to see myself being able to win a tournament with it. Or do you say, well, it's, you know, there might be some better choices or whatever, but this one's fine. I really like this unit. My guess is that players actually fit into a bell curve. That's my suspicion, but I have no research on this. I'm guessing I fall into the middle with probably most people, suspicion only, where we want something to be good enough, not trash, but we'll use what we like because we like certain figs, and even if they're not the best, we'll still put them on the table, and that's fine. We'll have fun with them. And then I think there's probably this little snaky tails on the end of the bell curve that are people who will only use it if it's sort of hyper efficient. Like everything for them has to cut it. Like it has to be in the, if this was school evaluations, we'd say like it's in the 90th percentile, right? So it has to be those top tier picks only. Everything working at its absolute best. And then I think there are those that are probably down on the other end where they would say, I don't care what it is. Anything's fine. I use the models I love, period, end of story. That's the beginning and end of the discussion for me. But where do you fall on that curve? I understand this is a tough one to answer. So video responses are certainly encouraged for you to talk this through on your own. And by the way, this is certainly game agnostic. I think this concept of sort of the power curve and where units fall and how you construct your lists and what you use, I think this is as true in basically any war game that's out there, from Malifaux and Infinity and Warhammer and Ninth and anything. I suspect that we all engage in this sort of evaluation in some way. And I'm interested in the tools that we use and specifically where we all draw the line and why. I know for me it's drawn because my love of the model is weighted more heavily than the efficiency of the model, right? To me, that has a higher weight, but it still only weighs so much. And if something is just total garbage, it will eventually tip the scale. So, like, here's an easy example of one that's just on the other side of the line, and it breaks my heart. I mentioned the Blood Throne, but here's another one. And one that is really, like, the most punishing, crippling, awful thing to me. Giants. I hate giants. And the reason I hate giants is because, first of all, I don't know what they do for 170 points, but the reason of that is mainly because of their ability to fall over when charging. That when you roll doubles, they fall over and fail to charge. That is such a common occurrence. You've got about a 1 in 6 chance of that happening. Meaning, like, many charges you will fail for no reason, even at 3 or 4 inches. You will just happen to roll doubles and happen to fall over, and that when you will happen to fail that charge. That is an infuriating rule to me. Like, maybe it's not, and I'm not even saying, like, attack-wise, they're probably fine, they're whatever. But when I read that rule, I look at that and I go, that is so crippling to that model for that cost, right? I'm hard-pressed to understand where the value is that that unit creates. And I love giants. I have an army of giants. I doubt I can turn so you can see it. Right behind me, there is a shelf of 9 giants, okay? Like, I built an army of giants. I love giants. And And yet, I don't ever use them because of that infuriating rule. So, that's the reason. Where is your cutoff? How much are you weighting these things? What is good to you? Like I said, drop it in the comments down below or make a video response. As always, all video responses will be linked below, so you can always come back and check those out. But look forward to the conversation, and as always, we'll see you next time.